Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Happy Monday. Hope you're doing very, very well. Happy hump of the international break. We're nearly there. Wasn't a really good way of phrasing it, was it? Hump of the international break? Halfway through, maybe.
Halfway is always associated with Wednesday, Alex.
That's what I'm saying, hump day. You're not having it. He's not having it. As you can probably hear or you can see, I'm here with Rohan. Hello, sir.
Hello.
No George today. George is got some work stuff that he needs to do, so we're here. We're doing our Monday main show together. Just to say, Rohan is now on the main podcast. I think we mentioned this before. The problem is we've never all got together.
We've actually never done a stream together.
We've never done it. You, me, and George have never done an actual podcast together. And the plan is the main podcast, the Monday podcast, will turn into us three together, but it just never works out ever. No, it's always like I'm away or Rohan's away or whatever. Yeah. But it'll happen. How was your weekend, bro?
No, it's been good. It's been chilled. Can't lie. I needed a little bit of a break from Arsenal, to be honest.
Yep.
Yeah, and it just allowed me to do things that I needed to get done. And yeah, I'm on top of that now. But now I'm kind of a bit bored. So
yeah, it needs to come back. I was out with James from the Gooniverse last night in Clapham.
Yeah.
And we just found ourselves in the back of Simmons' bar just talking about Arteta. And I was like, it's inescapable. There's nothing we can, it's always on the mind. It always just goes back to, but could he have done this? Could he have done that? But yes, international break is nearly over. We're back this weekend. Are we Saturday or Sunday? I can't remember. But anyway.
Sunday.
We want to talk. We've sort of had the period. I suppose it almost felt like morning, certainly on the podcast over the last couple of weeks. But I want to talk sort of positives because there is a run coming up where I'm going to talk you through it now. This is Arsenal's next 10 games. Let's just do 10 games. So we're at home against Nottingham Forest. We then go away to Sporting. We're then away at West Ham United. We're then at home to Ruben Amorim's Manchester United. We're then away at Fulham. We are at home against Monaco. We're at home against Everton. How many is that? That's hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At home against Everton, 7. At home against Palace is 8. Away against Palace in the league this time is 9. And then at home against Ipswich Town is 10. Reading that out and hearing that, and how little we have to leave London. We kind of spoke about this on Thursday on the live show, right?
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel things could feel very, very different within like 6 weeks. And that's kind of football and that's reality, of course. But, I'm kind of clinging on to that at the moment. I'm desperate for that ball to hit the back of the net and sort of feeling about those sort of 10 games that we might be feeling very, very different when they finish.
Yeah, it's... What do they call it? Copium, on surface level. Copium. But I don't think it is copium, to be honest. We've spoke about it a couple of times already in previous pods about how I look at Arsenal's last 2 games in particular, looking at Inter Milan and Chelsea, and I saw a lot of encouraging signs. Now, the counter to that from people, from Arsenal fans, and I completely get it, is, we lost to Inter and we drew against Chelsea. We're not getting the results. And I think, from what Arsenal have been doing over the past 2 seasons in terms of competing for the title, we look at these periods of the season as critical moments as to why we've not been able to get over the line. That's the argument that people will make. So I get that. But I always think that, when we're in November, you have to look at details and things that are happening in game that can give you some optimism, to give you some hope. And I do think that those 2 games in particular, there are a lot of things. And it's kind of like, I think, like last season, if you remember the cluster of poor results that we had in December against Liverpool, which is not a bad result, getting a draw at Anfield, but when you take into account it happening with Fulham and West Ham immediately afterwards, that's 1 point out of 9. It's a cluster that inevitably led to Arsenal being the reason for me as to why we didn't get over the line. And people can say the same thing this season, as we've had another cluster, and we could come towards the end of the season and look back at this as the moment in which Arsenal this was the reason why they lost the league, But I do think that when you look back at that West Ham game in particular last season, if you can remember it, it's like we lost 2-0. But if you play that game 10 times, Arsenal win that 9 times out of 10. There are a lot of encouraging signs. And I'm not saying that we've had a West Ham type of game yet in terms of the number of chances we generated in that game relative to Inter and Chelsea. But I think that there are signs when you look a little bit deeper, with obviously Ødegaard coming back against Chelsea. And I think that 70 minutes and onwards in particular, I think genuinely he was cooking for the entire game. But I'd say, after Chelsea managed to get their equaliser, you saw what Ødegaard does for the team in terms of his responsibility, not just on the ball and not just in the press, but the way that he kind of instructs other players in terms of where to stand, where to be, to kind of dismantle the opposition, their shape. And that is something that you can take as real optimism going into these next run of games, and there's other things as well. I think Marino's cameo as well was really good, and we can kind of see what he's going to add to the team. I think so far he's had some good games, he's had some bad games, but that's kind of what you expect for a player who's just came into this team, which is it's very difficult to adapt immediately, especially given the role that he has to play in it. So these are small little nuggets of information that I think we're getting that can give us hope going into these next run of games. And like you alluded to, the fact that our next cluster, these next 10 or 11 or whatever games it is, they're all in London or in and around London. And I think that makes a massive difference, especially when you compare it to the likes of City and Liverpool and the fixtures that they've got as well. So,
yeah. That Ipswich game is a month and 10 days away, so about 6 weeks, and it could feel so different. I agree that there's so much to be hopeful about. And there's been so many things like over the international break, and it's like, Arsenal have no problem getting the ball to the final third, and Arsenal are still, 11v11, they've still got really good XG numbers and all these sorts of things. To me, it almost makes it more annoying, I think, in some way. Like all of these like positives, and you're like, it's kind of more frustrating in a way that the results haven't gone our way. Why do you think we lose in clusters? Because this is a consistent thing for us now.
Yeah.
And it could be, I don't know, genuinely, someone in the comments maybe can let me know, like, is this a thing that only happens to Arsenal? Does this happen to City and Liverpool? It feels, this is the first time that I can remember City losing in a cluster. This is the first time I can remember it. I'm not, probably as we hyper-focus on our own team, don't we? And we only think about us. But I feel like it's a uniquely Arsenal under Arteta thing to have a period of a season where you lose 3 or 4 in a row. And I don't have an answer. I don't know whether it's physical. I don't know whether it's just the luck of the draw. I don't know why. I don't know. Do you have a sense?
I think it's very difficult to pinpoint, because I think when we look at his tenure so far, so 21-22, we had that cluster at the start of the season with the COVID outbreak, of course, and we had players absent due to that. We also had injuries, and we had Brentford, Man City and Chelsea, in which we accumulated we didn't win any of those games. We lost all 3 games. And then we've had the periods towards the end of that season as well. Before Nketiah was introduced, we had the holding Kivior moments. So I think for me, where I look at it is I think Mikel Arteta, and we spoke about this actually on the pod before, Mikel Arteta, he knows the problems sometimes, and he's a very smart guy. He knows what's happening. But sometimes I feel like he is very, very focused on the initial plan that he has, and he will look to try and maintain that because he thoroughly believes it. And then eventually he'll make the change. But then you ask yourself, well, maybe if you'd made that change 1 or 2 games earlier, it could have been a little bit different. And I think that's a big part that comes to it, and
this is one of the things me and James were discussing last night.
Yeah.
We were literally saying, we were thinking about the Smith Rowe moment when Smith Rowe came into the team in 2020, even going back then, that had been called for ages.
Yes.
I remember at the time, the thing is like credit to him, because as you're saying, he always does adapt, but it feels like it's the plan A is absolutely wrung out before he goes, okay, let me switch to plan B. And I think also then that makes the kind of the Nwaneri thing even a little bit more frustrating this season, because he's changed what plan B is, again, with Smith Rowe and Vieira going out and not wanting to use that in the same way. But we were talking about this. It's like, it's so frustrating to know that this manager does have the answer, because we've seen it, whether it's signing Calafiori when Gabriel had all the touches at Bayern, or whether it's Smith Rowe, or whether it's, the changes to the press, or the changes to, our evolutions with Zinchenko coming to, whatever it is, it feels like he knows what the next step is, but he doesn't do it.
He doesn't do it immediately. Want it
to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's where people get, and I understand the frustrations, because people are looking at it and thinking, we're not learning from previous seasons. We're going again with this cluster of results that inevitably leads to Arsenal not achieving the desired outcome come the end of the season. Now, that's not to say that other teams don't have these clusters. Like last season, Man City had it in December. They had a very similar cluster to what we had in our Fulham, West Ham, Liverpool group of games. They had it, I think, against Palace and I can't remember the other teams, but then they went on their run of operating at, I think, 104-point pace relative to Arsenal's 101-point pace. But that was the difference in the end, wasn't it? So it's like, and that's why I like to just focus on us and how we can kind of stop these clusters from happening. Because I always think, over the course of a season, you're going to get bad results, and it's going to happen. Teams, players are human, and they're going to make mistakes. But when that happens in succession, that's when the problem arises, especially when you're talking about what we're looking to achieve. And last season, if you go back to the first half of last season, a lot of people would argue, persisting with Kai Havertz nominally as our left centre mid, predominantly throughout that first half of the season when he was playing. And then we made the change eventually in the second half of the season, moving him up as the focal point. Yeah. And the rest is history.
That's another example.
So these are things that are kind of like really frustrating for you. But at the same time, it gives you confidence because we have a track record of seeing Arteta have this sort of adversity. He knows the problems and he will implement the solution, but it doesn't happen straight away.
And I suppose people would be saying, well, yeah, that's what's cost us, which is, sort of fair enough. I think we both, I was saying this last night, I think we said this before as well. I love Arteta so much, but I think there comes a point where you've kind of, I've used the analogy of like a long-term relationship because you've known him for 5 years. These sorts of things become more annoying over time. Like at the start, you're like, well, yeah, okay, he might take a bit of time, but at least he does the right thing. And now I'm like, no, but he's taking too much time. Like it's kind of like, someone's bad habits don't annoy you at first, but after a while they do. And especially when it feels like they're costing us. But it's not just him. And it's also, if Liverpool had a couple more poor results under Arne Slot, we are having a very, very different conversation. Yeah, we're still off City, but we really are. And I looked at their fixtures yesterday. I want to read you out sort of their sort of similar time frame, sort of next 6 weeks or so. So they've got an away game at Southampton, but then from there it gets pretty tough. So they've got Real Madrid who comes to Anfield. Then they got City at home at Anfield. Then they go away midweek to Newcastle. Then they have the Merseyside derby that following weekend. Then they go away in the week to Spain. Then they come back and they play Fulham at home, who are in unbelievable form. Yeah, okay. Then they have Carabao Cup away at St Mary's against Southampton. But then they're away again at Spurs on the 22nd of December, which is about when we're sort of similar game week to that Ipswich Town game for us.
Yeah.
And again, as you said, I don't want it to just all be copium and it all be us going like, well, it's going to be fine because, I do feel quite sad about our start of the season in many ways.
Yeah.
But I'm aware that is a point in time. It's where we are right now. It's where I am right now. And I don't know whether it is just this sort of blind optimism. Like things do even out over the course of the season, and I think Liverpool are about to go through a period where they're going to be questioned. And this is another thing. If Liverpool come out this season at this pace, I don't know what point pace they're at actually, but if they're at this pace for the whole season and they win it, they deserve to win it.
Yeah.
They really do. Like, and at that point, okay, we can maybe have a look at ourselves, but sometimes you do have to say, in the same way with Man City, chapeau. Like, if you're operating at a 104-point pace and we're a little bit behind you, like, and you're the best team I think the Premier League's ever seen, at some point you have to take into account the opposition. I think the frustration is that the out of reach of what it feels like opposition Man City don't feel as out of reach anymore, and we've got a new one. It almost feels like it's like a new foe. So yeah, there's so much to kind of contend with here, but I am looking forward to seeing how they sort of contend with that next couple of weeks.
It's because right now I think what people are assuming potentially is that Liverpool are not going to go through any form of adversity, which I think is just go through Premier League history. Yep. Even Manchester City at their best, they go through adversity. Every team does, and right now I think Liverpool. I think you've got to give him a lot of credit, honestly, in terms of how quickly he's been able to settle in and set the team up. And you can kind of see blueprints of his philosophy. But I do maintain that when I look at this Liverpool team, it is the spine of it is full of all-timers. All-timers who, let's say they did win the Premier League come the end of the season. You're talking about players who could compete for the all-time Premier League 11. Players who certainly are in that conversation. They may not be in there, but they're in the conversation. But I think when you are under a manager like Jurgen Klopp for so long and you're coached to play that way, there's a level of muscle memory that is still installed in that team. Like if you look at the goals that they scored against Aston Villa, that's peak Jurgen Klopp type football in terms of quick breakaways. And that is where they are very dangerous. But I mean, I look at that Aston Villa game in particular. That's what also gives me confidence, because this is a Liverpool team that still does rely upon that fast pace style in which the game does become end to end. And it's kind of like you throw a punch, we throw a punch, but we back ourselves to throw more punches and knock you out. And I don't think that is sustainable over the entirety of a season. And I look at that cluster, as you've alluded to, there's some really hard games. And what I really want to focus on also is the fact that Arsenal have had a really hard start to the season. And I don't want people may argue that, these are excuses, etc. And that's fine if that's your viewpoint. But when you're going away to Aston Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea, Man City, Spurs, and then playing Liverpool at home as well. And bearing in mind that
Bournemouth,
I mean, look what Bournemouth did to Man City as well. But these are really difficult games, and that's not to say that Arsenal don't have problems, but that is significant context relative to you look at Liverpool's fixtures, and they're going to go through what we've had to go through up until the Christmas period. And I actually think when I'm looking at the Christmas period for Arsenal in general over the years, this is one of the most favourable I've seen us have ever. It's a really good run of games. And this is why I think things can change very quickly, and I'm not even looking all the way towards the end of the year. I'm looking at our next two games in which we've got Nottingham Forest at home and West Ham away from home. Then you look at Liverpool, they've got Southampton and they play Man City. And Man City have got Spurs and Liverpool. If Arsenal win their next two games, immediately something changes. It does. Something changes, and then people are starting to think slightly differently. Because right now, 9 points looks a tall order, and it is a massive deficit. But Liverpool will go through adversity, and it's down on Arsenal to be able to react and respond. Now, people would argue, has the first 11 games of the season so far given them confidence that Arsenal can go on a run? Many will say no. And I get that, but I then go back to the fixtures, I go back to the red cards, I go back to the injuries that we've had as well. I'm not saying every red card is... there are certain red cards I do believe that we should have done better with. But these are this is a lot of context as to where Arsenal are. But then if Arsenal are able to, come the next, 5-6 games, which are very favourable, and go on a winning run, which is what they've been able to do many times under Arteta, and we've already mentioned it, how he does react, and then we go on a big run. We've seen it in the first 19 games of the season, the 22-23 season, accumulating 50 points. We've seen last season the 100-point pace come the start of 2024. There is evidence to suggest that this team can go on a run. And I also think there are small nuggets of information from our last couple of games, alongside players coming back like Calafiori, as you've mentioned already, that can really help us go on and give ourselves a bit of momentum going into the next run.
Yeah. And some people would say, doesn't matter, we've already lost the sort of the margin of error, and that's fine. But I think everyone, no matter where you sit, would agree we haven't seen this team's full potential. We haven't even seen the team of last year, let alone what I think could possibly be improved. We've seen flashes maybe, but not in any sort of extended run. So I think almost everyone would agree we're not playing to our potential, which is at least as a baseline, a decent sort of cause for optimism. Let's shift gears slightly. We haven't actually discussed this on the pod, I don't think. We might have discussed it on a live maybe. Edu leaving Arsenal. It kind of just gets caught up in the results and stuff, and George has covered it on the stream and sort of what it all means and stuff, and we could go down the sort of the Edu route. But I'm more interested in talking, to be honest, about his successor and what that looks like. There's a lot of rumours at the moment. There was a rumour earlier on about Luis Campos. There's one about Olabe, who I think was at Real Sociedad. There was one about a guy who was at Red Bull at Monaco. I think there's lots of sort of rumours flying around. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm an expert on any, sporting executive around the world. But what I think could be, what is maybe more useful, is to kind of try and outline what we're looking for from a sporting director. What do we want? I'm curious where you and I might disagree on this, or where we do agree. First off, I want a little bit older.
Yep.
And I say that, and I also, and maybe this is kind of a second point, there is this thing about kind of, unearthing gems or kind of flipping players for, signing a player at £2 million and selling for £20 million, or 20 million and selling for 80 million, whatever it is. Honestly, I don't know how high a track record of doing that is on my list. Reason I say that, we're not trying to be Brentford. We want to be clever. We do want to be clever. I'm not saying we don't want to get value for our players, and if we can get a gem like a Martinelli and grow that, then absolutely brilliant. But I'm not looking for some innovator. I'm not looking for someone who, it would be nice, but as into the top of the list, in the sense that someone who's going to come in and, get us a load of, kids from Brazil and do the kind of Brentford thing. I want someone who's going to get us on the level of the Madrids and the Barcelonas and the Bayerns and the Man Cities. And to me, those guys are the guys who say, okay, where's Musiala going next? Where are the established talents going next? Where is and this is my thing I always say, but I feel like a broken record, but I think it's so true. Sometimes I think Arsenal fans don't maybe reverse engineer where they want to be competing with Real Madrid. They want to be competing with Barcelona, but then when it comes time to do that, they don't want to take the same action. And I find it slightly bizarre. Like, we don't want to give players over £300,000 a week, or we don't want to, be in for a certain player. And that's fine. That's up to you. But if you then also want us to be beating them on the pitch, you have to accept the trade-off. So for me, I think age and experience is something that I'm really keen to go after. I'm not, again, to be clear, I'm not saying I don't want someone who can flip players, but this idea that we need some guy who's going to, go into the data and, find us gems. We're not Brentford. So I like the Luis Campos idea. I like getting someone who's been in the game, been experienced, who can challenge Arteta a little bit. Personally, as I've said before, and sorry, I'm going a bit of a rant now, but personally, as I've said before, I don't mind giving Arteta the keys a little bit, because I think any successful project needs to give someone the keys. And if you're going to give someone the keys, it is Arteta to me. But you do still need challengers. And I think he probably will. He's not going to. I doubt Arteta is going to be challenged by someone trying to make their way in the game. The challenge level that we want is the really high level stuff to Arteta, because he's established himself at the club. Yeah. And that's only going to come from someone who probably doesn't need to make their name in the game. So when Luis Campos' name comes out, I go, okay, interesting. And that sort of level is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and again, I'm very similar to you in terms of I'm not particularly clued up on the ins and outs of every single sporting director out there in terms of the top ones. And that's why the way I look at it is I've got my own criteria and what they need to do in order for it to be successful. And the experience card was a massive one for me. I think it's very important to have someone who has been at the helm of a successful rebuild. And a rebuild that has led to big honours. That is the ideal one. It's not just a successful rebuild in terms of acquiring value. It's a rebuild that has enabled that team to go on and kick on and win the big trophies. And I think that is valuable experience. Something that, at the end of the day, right now, Arteta doesn't have. We've not been able to get over the line for the big honours yet. So I think someone like that is an absolute must. The gem point, it's not one of my top priorities. However, what I will say is one of the criticisms that I had of Edu is the fact that he didn't exploit the South American market, and that was one of his big things that he was mentioning. I can't remember the exact reports to it, but that was something that was promised. And you look at the players that we signed in South America. I mean, Marquinhos, it's not great.
It's not great reading,
yeah. But at the same time, I think that would have been more of a priority in terms of unearthing gems if Arsenal were 2-3 years ago in their project, whereas right now, that is not the priority. It's about acquiring ready-made talent, but that still fits in terms of the overall profile of the squad in terms of age. And I do stand by what Edu said previously in terms of, we're looking to acquire players below the age of 26. If they're above 26, they absolutely need to be performing well right now at a really high level and consistently. But I think in terms of I found it very interesting. A lot of people were not happy with the reports coming out of Arteta having a say in this. And I didn't understand that, because he absolutely should have a say. If he doesn't have a say, you then fall potentially into that Raul Sanllehi, Sven Mislintat category, where you've got two guys, they're driving recruitment with big ideas, but clash. One favours contacts, the other favours data. And it led to a conflict of interest, which led to turbulence. And that led to Arsenal's structure, kind of de-raveling in the wrong way. So I think it's a must that Arteta has a say. And the reason why I'm not worried about Arteta having a say and him not appointing a kind of like him not going for like a yes man is I always refer to the Miguel Molina lecture, and you're probably like tired of me talking about something. But the Miguel Molina lecture, who's Arsenal's head tactical analyst at the club, he details the structure of Arsenal, and one of the members is this guy called the academy coach. And it's not what you would think of running the academy. It's someone who is looking across Europe for all the new innovations and new ideas that are out there that we can implement in our game model. So that is a sign of Arteta. He's very open to new ideas. He's very open to new possibilities. It's not just his way. I mean, look at Nicholas Jova, for example, our set-piece coach. I highly doubt Arteta is objecting everything he is saying and he wants it his way. I'm very sure that our corner routines are driven by our set-piece coach. So this gives me confidence as to why
comes as stands as a technical error. So.
It gives me confidence that Arteta having a say does not mean that we are going to get a yes man that is just following his orders. Now, it's a balance, isn't it? You can't have a yes man, but you can't have a contrarian who just opposes to everything. It's got to be that balance.
Something on this. There was an interview with Andreas Kjolksen, who was our previous set piece coach and is now at Man City. Man United. And he said, some suggest that Arteta's preference for younger coaching, this is from an interview in the Athletic with him. The quote reads, some suggest that Arteta's preference for younger coaching staff indicates he does not want his authority challenged. Those who've worked closely with him say otherwise. Yeah. And Georgsen says, I think we were all selected because we were not just yes men. The Swede was Jova's predecessor as a set-piece coach. We all had a strong willingness to speak when we thought we had something to add. Yeah. As a manager, you can make it really comfortable for yourself, or you can get a group of qualified people that are willing to speak their minds, and that's what Mikel did. There could be a bit of friction, there could be intense discussions, but the loyalty was always to the group, and Mikel always wanted the best idea to win.
There you go.
And for me,
there you go.
Yeah. And for some reason, I don't know why, the best idea was always the dogs, but there you go. No, don't laugh at that. Don't laugh at that. But yeah, so bad. But yeah, look, who do I trust more? A fan who sees him in press conferences, or someone who literally doesn't, he's at another club. He doesn't have to say anything nice about him. He's talking about him from there's no need to. I trust that. And I think also what Miguel Millen talked about, and the thing you said about the academy coaches, I don't buy this narrative that Arteta is some dogmatic, there was like quotes about Steve Round that went round around the sort of the confliction between Raya and Ramsdale. I think apparently Steve Round was like less sure and was sort of saying, well, it'll unbalance the group, but Mikel wanted to push through with it. Whether that led to him leaving, I don't know. But I do think people mistake. Look, maybe Arteta has too much power. How have we quantified that?
Yeah.
But you always run the risk, and this is something we've spoken about before, when you have someone, when you have any successful period, you're going to have someone who's a bit dogmatic, who's going to be a little bit, it's kind of my way or the highway. That can go too far, of course, but you don't win anything by committee, not in England. And so, so the challenge thing in terms of the director of football and the sporting director, I want that, but how much do I want him to challenge him on ideas of football, on ideas of tactics, on ideas of day-to-day running with the players? I don't know if there's many other people I trust more than Mikel to do that. And he's got his team, people that
That's his team, isn't it? Yeah, you've got lots of Miguel Molina, etc. They're the ones who should be challenging him because that's their role, So.
And we see it, and we see like the table they meet around and all that stuff, and they've got their own individual players, and then set pieces, and periodization and fitness, and he's taking in all the information from all the experts and then making his decision. So I don't buy this thing that he's just dogmatically doing that. The thing that maybe I want to get specific on advice and challenging Mikel is around the squad building and things like selling Ramsdale in summer 2023.
Yeah.
Things like that, where someone says, I'm okay with you doing that, but we need to balance the books here. Or, Mikel, I know your plan next summer is to sign insert here. That means insert here will need to go. And I'm not going to say who I think and who I think might need to go. But that means that we need to go and do something about that now. And that might upset things. The players at the club might start to hear stuff. There might be rumours that I know you don't like. But in order to protect the club, I'm sorry, we're going to have to start that process now so we're not sat with our pants down in the summer. That's the sort of advice that I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me, the big one I think for Arteta is squad management and utilisation, as you've kind of, already gone into. I think So you've got Pep Guardiola and Arteta, and I think they're very different in terms of one really likes continuity in Arteta, whereas the other is willing to make changes, and that can depend on the finances of the squad, etc., and quality. But I do think that it's a good thing that Arteta wants to have continuity, because one thing that we've not had this season is continuity in terms of selection, and that has affected our results. But at the same time, sometimes where you have a run of games that say your entire team is available, we've seen Arteta just keep to that same team. And that's good because it allows you to obviously pick up the results because you can see the potential of the team. But then when a couple of players come off injured, you then bring someone else in who's not warm because they've not played, and you're not able to get that same level of quality and that same level of synergy. And then you look back at periods of the season where maybe if we used him there, we could have got more out of him towards this period, and that could have led to better results, etc. So I do think squad management and utilization is something that someone who has seen that previously could advise, and that's not even going to the actual tactics and the details. That's just how you can manage your squad. And I do think that is something of an area of improvement. And certainly I'd like someone to be able to challenge him on that.
Yeah. And a perfect example of that might be the thing we were talking about earlier in terms of Nwaneri. In the summer, it's like, okay, Mikel, we're selling him. That's fine. Yes. We can do that. But that means you have to trust the person that, and if you don't, then that's fine. Then we need to find a different way. Do we loan someone in? Do we not sell something or whatever? But we can't. You can't leave us short, kind of thing. Yeah. I also think a manager. It's not a manager's job, and it shouldn't be a manager's job to think about the value of a player tanking. It shouldn't be the job of the manager to say, actually I can't do this because, he's on so-and-so wages. That shouldn't be the job of the manager. That should be the sporting director, whatever. And what's interesting is we're saying all this kind of implying that Edu wouldn't have done that a little bit, I guess, to some degree. And I wonder why, because I kind of feel that, and I feel that maybe Edu wouldn't have been as challenging, but maybe he was. But the problem is he seems so genial, so kind of the smooth talker, the connector, that him really putting his foot down and saying no to Arteta, I don't know. But also that it's difficult in dynamics at work, isn't it? When someone isn't technically, you're both employed by the same person. So you're not really my boss. We're working in partnership. So you need a natural authority, and that's why I looked at age. That's why I looked at age.
That's what I was just going to point out, and this is why I think the experience card is massive. I think it is an absolute must, because I think one thing that I do is, what is his experience in terms of overseeing a squad and actual management and utilization? And that's where perhaps maybe they had those discussions, but maybe it wasn't a strong enough voice. Whereas someone who has overseen a rebuild, who has overseen a squad that has been used correctly, when you look at the minutes breakdown of every single player, that has led to them winning trophies. Having someone like that, I think, can give that sort of opinion can hold a little bit more weight, and I think that could make a massive difference. The one I really wanted to point to touch in on that Nwaneri comment that you made about how, this is quite frustrating. I find this quite frustrating because obviously there's a side of Arsenal fans who will say, Mikel Arteta is doing the right thing in terms of not rushing Ethan Nwaneri into the team because he's only 17, etc. Despite the fact that we've had Martin Odegaard injured for a lengthy amount of time. And okay, if that's what you want to go with, then I could revert back to, well, then why did we loan out Fabio Vieira? Why did we sell Emile Smith-Rowe? I'm not going with that angle because I think the decisions that we made there are totally fair. If you're not going to use those players, as we saw in the previous season, then there's no point just keeping them there. Let them go away, and use and have players that you trust. So Ethan's came in, and in terms of actual like for like replacement, Ethan Nwaneri is the Odegaard replacement normally in the team, but we haven't used him. So then I'm going with that angle and saying, okay, you've got rid of those two players, and I understood that, but now you've got in a player who with such talent, you need to use him, but we've not seen that. So those are the things that I think it would be nice to see Arteta challenged on. And that's where I think the experience is such a massive.
Yeah. So we're thinking experience. We're thinking someone who's been at big clubs before. I want to reiterate that point from earlier about where's Musiala's next contract? Where's Florian Wirtz's next contract? Like those sorts of things. I'm not saying necessarily that we sign those players. I'm saying I don't know whether we've been in those conversations. Probably Rice is the one who was like probably could have gone anywhere. Could he? would he have gone to Madrid or I don't know, maybe Bayern, maybe.
Yeah.
But that was probably the one where I felt like, every club in the world is in for him. But I haven't really felt that. And again, not saying that every talent is right for Arsenal. Obviously not. But to be in the conversation, to be connected in that way, to know where a player's going, to know the family, to know, that I kind of want that for Arsenal to establish themselves as this big club. I think also a communicator, someone who can communicate a vision. I think Edu was good. I never. This is, and I'm aware I'm saying this as someone who speaks about 3 Spanish words, so I'm a huge hypocrite. But fit for purpose, right? I was never that impressed with his command of the language, to be honest. And I think and the reason I say that is not because I think he could communicate fine. I think it held him back in terms of communicating to the fans, in terms of connecting to the fans. There's just like a slight barrier in terms of what he could say and the way he phrased things and the way he said things. I often thought, I wonder if you were in your native language, would you have phrased it like that? Again, it's somewhere down the list, but I would like someone who's a bit more, maybe just a little bit more advanced and able to connect with fans in that way. I hate these sorts of points because it feels like I'm not criticizing him. I can't speak a word of Portuguese. I'm not saying that. But I think the ability to communicate, because it seems like whenever I heard him speak in Portuguese or in Spanish, he sounded so much more fluent and confident and sort of assured, and I never quite felt that in English. So yeah, that's another thing. But also part of that is ability to actually connect with people, and I think Edu had that. But again, Mikel's so brilliant on camera. This is another thing. He's so brilliant on camera. He's so good with cameras. I never quite felt that with Edu. And these are things that, if I had to put them somewhere, they're somewhere down my list. But they all sort of contribute, I think. I think someone who can come in and be, show us where we're going, really. And I never felt Edu did that a bit, maybe especially towards the beginning, but sort of 2023 onwards, it all felt like Mikel. And I'd love someone to come in and be like, here's where we're going. Here's our plan. We want to be doing this. Here's what we're doing to the stadium. Mikel's getting on with that. I'm getting on with this. I think we need that a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you alluded to, it's kind of like we've seen Edu more since we've kind of got good, and that's where he's kind of explained more the process, which is good. And I actually think, to be fair, I think it was the Men in Blazers YouTube account, I think, in an interview with Edu, and I thought he spoke quite well, and he was quite clear with what he was alluding to in terms of Arsenal's rebuild, the decisions that they made with contracts, and the different criteria points, etc. So I actually felt he was a pretty good communicator. But
I just felt when it came to the vision, and also you said we heard from him more as we got better. I actually think we heard from him a lot. So probably 2020 onwards, we got a lot of communication from him. Yeah. I'd say towards the end, he spoke less and less and less. And I think so, in terms of just interviews that I can remember, right? And my issue is, as I say about around the language, but to be honest, it's more around showing us where we're going. I think Edu could explain, from what I saw, again, and this is, I'm quite an engaged Arsenal fan, I hope. So, hopefully they might use someone like me or you or people listening to this to say, how much do you feel Edu connected with you? I remember that Men in Blazers interview, and he did a great job of explaining his process. But in terms of the explanation of where Arsenal are going, where he sees Arsenal in the global picture, what we want to do, where we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, what the commercial picture is, I think there's more scope. And I think if someone comes in and does that, we'll go, oh, this is great. I wish we'd had this before. I think because we don't necessarily know it yet. We don't know.
I hear that. Yeah. It's kind of like he speaks really well in terms of what Arsenal have been doing to get to the stage that they are at. Yeah. But in terms of the next steps and how we achieve that and the process of getting to the outcome, it's not crystal clear. Whereas I think someone like Josh Kroenke, for example, I think Josh Kroenke is an excellent speaker in terms of where he wants to see Arsenal go. And that's kind of like, you're kind of seeing someone who is, he's able to kind of talk about what Arsenal have done to get to the stage that they're in right now. But he's also expanded and looked at what Arsenal are going to be looking to do further along the lines and not standing still. So that, I think, I wouldn't say it'd probably be high on my list as long as it is kind of like very well connected within the club in terms of what they're looking to do. But yeah, it does play a factor. But I wonder who would be able to give us that immediately if it is one of these, sporting directors from top European clubs who may not be as strong in English either as well. So
might take some time. But I do think if we can, however we get there, get more of a sense of where we're headed, especially as the club we are. I just think, the way Chiki Begiristain talks to City fans, or like, is it Khaldoon? He does interviews all the time, just talking about where City are going and stuff. And I just, it's a little thing, but it's sort of on my tick list. But really, that's it. I mean, age, experience, the ability to challenge Mikel, the sort of the big picture stuff, the communication. I kind of trust the club, though. I trust the club wherever they go.
Yeah. I think the names that have came out are quite encouraging as well when you do just a little bit of research into them. So I think, I always tend to think, when you get like transfer rumours and you can get a whole host of different players and, you can kind of, this is rubbish. I feel like with things like sporting directors and changes within the structure, when links surface, they tend to be pretty concrete, and there's actual like substance to it. So I think we're linked to the Real Sociedad sporting director. I think he's on gardening leave though right now, which is interesting.
I think Edu is as well.
Edu's on gardening leave, and maybe that's interesting as well. Maybe there's actual legs in that one as well. So it'd be interesting. For me, as long as they hit certain criteria points, I'm happy, and I'm very open-minded on this. So.
I wonder when we do it as well, because it might be a thing we don't do until next summer. It might be something we wait until someone's coming in, But also, it's that thing of if someone's on gardening leave, but they know they're starting the job in 6 months. It's like, well, you can.
This is what I'm saying. So if someone,
work, what isn't work? Like,
exactly. I think someone on gardening leave, someone on gardening leave, and they know that they're going to be taking over. Yeah. They're going to be able to do their background work. They're going to be working behind the scenes anyway, aren't they? So
I think so. Rohan,
yes, sir.
We had a tweet from Hand of Ozil, who said Ethan Nwaneri, and then a little holding a pen emoji and a little timer emoji. So what that means is Ethan Nwaneri is getting a new contract. Obviously.
Lifetime contract.
In fact, I'm being sarcastic or facetious. Hand of Ozil is very reliable, and I think there are rumours that Ethan Nwaneri is signing a new contract. Regardless of that, this can't be anything other than a good step. I don't think we need to sort of talk about that. Where do you see him in the next sort of moving? Because we talked about his sort of usage this season. 3 years' time, where is Ethan in your estimations in terms of this talent? Like what level is he at?
So I've got a feeling now. I have frustration with how he's been used so far. And again, I hear people will say the 17-year-old child, etc. But I think this is a talent that is, forget about the age, just look at what he's doing. Look at what we've seen this season so far. Every single opportunity he's been given, he's taken. I don't like the fact that people look at that Newcastle cameo and he missed certain triggers of the underlap that he didn't make, etc. and those things. I think that's really harsh because, let's be honest, a lot of senior players weren't doing their jobs in that game either. So to pinpoint that game as a way of saying he's not ready, I think is really, really unfair. But when you look at him and you look at the talent, and I think Mikel Arteta rates him so highly. This is the thing. So I think you can sit. In the.
Sorry to cut you off. Also, Mikel spoke about that thing at Brentford. Just for a moment, a professional manager of the caliber of Mikel Arteta thought it was worth his time to give a 15-year-old minutes against Brentford to show him he wants to play him. Yeah. Just deep that for a second. Just how highly he must be rated.
And do you not see I can take that even further. If you look at this season and Ethan Nwaneri's usage in the bigger games in the Premier League, etc., he's been brought on in the difficult game states. You don't do that if you don't rate a player. The frustration for me is, imagine we saw him from the start in this game or this game, what could have happened, etc. But we look at that Leicester game, right, when it was 2-2. It was the game, we're getting worried as to not getting over the line, etc. And you've got Gabriel Jesus on the bench, but he brings on Ethan Nwaneri, and his cameo was massive. Against Spurs, towards the latter stages of that game, when Saka comes off injured, you're thinking he's going to bring on a centre-back because we're struggling to control the game with the ball in that moment. But he brings on Ethan Nwaneri. Against Liverpool in the 85th minute, the game again, it's locked at 2-2. Again, he brings on Ethan Nwaneri. These are small nuggets of information have shown that the manager really rates him highly. And I think that next year, I think he's going to be a starter. I have a feeling that Arsenal's midfield rebuild is going to revolve around Ethan Nwaneri, a large portion of it. I really do. We saw small bits even in pre-season against Man United, where he played on the left side of midfield, and he was ridiculous. He's played on the right, the left, and the quality is undeniable. What I really like about him, and we talk about Arsenal's problems in terms of central access. Well, I think we won't go too much into it. I think it's by design as to why we don't access the centre as much as other teams. Personally, I think 2022, 2023, I think we saw a change from the end of that season till now. People will say Odegaard being out of the team was the reason why Arsenal haven't been access centre. Yes, maybe we've not done it enough, but this has been something that has been happening for Arsenal for a long time. When you look at someone like and when you look at someone like Ethan Nwaneri, he has quality that is different to other players in the team, like that turn, and then he's not afraid to take a shot after making that turn. That's something we don't have enough of. Willing to pull the trigger immediately and to drive into those sort of areas. I really do think that quality, that level of player, he's going to be in this team very soon. It's just a case of when and not if. There's nuggets of information there that Arteta is looking to integrate him, and I think give it a year's time, he's going to be a mainstay in this team. It's interesting because then how do you kind of juggle it? What happens in terms of what is the next iteration of Arsenal? And this is where I can't answer that. I don't think anyone can answer that with confidence because we don't know. So,
and it can't be in place of Odegaard.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah,
not anytime soon.
Yeah,
not anytime soon. I just can't see that happening. And also, my vision was does Saka come inside? You know what I mean? Like more permanently, but obviously they're happy with him where he is. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, in 3 years' time, definitely a starter at Arsenal. Absolutely. He's got to play. This kid's coming to play. He's not. And he believes in himself as well. So I really don't know. I've also been talking about this for a long time. It's like our Phil Foden. And that is what I see him as, in terms of that ability to receive in the pocket, as you were alluding to. I mean, is it a Rice Odegaard Nwaneri thing?
There's a possibility there. I mean, obviously, I think we'd have to tweak things in terms of our press, because right now then you're looking at Ethan Nwaneri playing on the left side of midfield, and we know how difficult that role is. I don't think he will be a guaranteed starter by next season, but I think he'll be a mainstay. I really do. We've already seen big periods this season so far in which he has been introduced, albeit the volume's not been there as to what we would have liked. But I think that this is the thing. I can't tell you with confidence as to where, but I think that talent you have to make compromises for, and I think that it's common.
And it's one of those things that to kind of keep in mind when, let's be honest, we are all looking at the forward areas and saying what can be done. We are all probably looking at that, certain slots in the team and saying, okay, who's going to be there? But, if we can basically nail down right now in our minds, and I think there will always be a degree of this, but we can basically nail down the goalkeeper, the two centre-backs, the right back, although I think there might be a conversation about that at some point. Yeah. Not that Ben White comes out of the team, but how we use that. I think we can nail down two of our midfielders, and I think we can nail down, our right winger, and probably, we can nail down them right now in terms of striker and left winger. But there's certain positions in the team that we can go, yeah, you're going to be here for the next couple of years, and then there's question marks. And I think especially on the left-hand side, in terms of the left winger, in terms of the left back, in terms of the central midfielder, although there's lots of promise there, and I'm not saying anything's going to happen, there's moving parts, is my point. And I wonder how much he's been in the thinking, with assigning a Marino instead of going for a Musiala or a Due or whatever it might have been that people wanted in the summer. And then if we are going to have a more of a Nwaneri type player in there alongside Odegaard, that changes what we need in a striker probably. It also might change what we need in the left winger. So how that jigsaw kind of fits together, I don't know. Equally, good players can play together. You know what I mean?
This is it, yeah.
I think this is kind of the perennial struggle, isn't it? It's how much it's the individual versus the collective, and I just think with a talent like that, sometimes you have to just let the individual thrive a little bit more, and that's something I want to see from Mikel, is him allow individuals just to show their talent and maybe have a bit of a drop-off in certain areas, but you get so much elsewhere that it's kind of not a thing. So I'm going to hit you with a hard-hitting question.
Go on.
Is Ethan Nwaneri signing a contract good for Arsenal?
Absolutely.
See, this is the stuff we do on the Cannon Podcast. This is the hard-hitting questions we ask on the Cannon Podcast.
These start hard.
Before we go
crazy.
to...
He's just such a baller, honestly.
He's such a baller. He's so good, mate.
That Foden actually comparison is really good because he's starting to be his trademark, isn't it? Where he turns and he just
have a shot
and he strikes. Yeah. Even against Inter, the one where he blazed it over, it's a very similar scenario. He's just...
It's really bizarre. A lot of the players coming out of HLM right now feel like Pep would love them.
Yeah.
like Saka, like it is in the kind of top there. Saka, Lewis Skelly, Nwaneri. Like it just feels like they are Pep players in so many ways. Like Lewis Skelly is such a Pep player as well. Yeah. If you look at his usage of Rico Lewis, etc. So yeah, it's crazy. So we have also had some news about Ben White undergoing a kind of minor procedure. Has it been officially confirmed, or has it come through the sort of the back channels?
It's come through the back channels, but I think there's some pretty concrete. Oh no, actually, I think the Mail reported it. I think
there's a lot of like sort of, Connor Marble Halls or whatever.
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, I'm just a bit like okay, but I get the same. I'm presuming we'd get like an official thing at some point. Maybe
that shows that it's not going to be as long.
Yeah, maybe, who knows? So basically, my point being that let's take all of this with a slight pinch of salt. Yeah. But let's talk Ben White and talk about that thing. I think we've all felt for a while that potentially there is an injury going on there, and sort of wonder what's going on. Zinchenko did this thing for Pro Direct Soccer, which I think we spoke about on CannonPod Live. And he said that Ben White lifts the most in the gym. And he said like the weights he's on are absolutely crazy. And it's so mad to me that someone so physically impressive in terms of when he played centrally against Liverpool and an ability to, at the moment, the repeat sprint ability isn't there, but his sprint ability, this guy is one of the craziest athletes I've ever seen at Arsenal. It's like what he, like, there's aspects to his game. There was a GIF you posted of him up against Pedro Neto. Yeah. And there are some concerns to his sort of technical side of his game. But the athletic aspect of Ben White's game, to be so strong and secure and sturdy as a centre-back and play as a full-back is wild. And if he's been injured, it's mad. The only question is why this has happened now. If it's been known about for a while. Again, we're working with scraps of information, so let's not go too far down, but let's assume he's known about it for a while. He must have. Why do it now? Why not do it in the summer when it wasn't at the Euros? And
Ibiza, weren't it? Because he knew
he wasn't going to be at the Euros. Is it to do with the fixtures that are coming up? We feel that we can get through it without him. Is it that it's actually not going to be that long out? What's your take on this situation?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you're thinking the summer would have been perfect. It would have been literally perfect.
We were waiting for a caller.
But maybe I think I've got a feeling maybe he's not going to be out for as long as what's been reported. But I also think maybe it is down to who we have coming back. I mean, it's reported, and touch wood, Tomiyasu is back after the international break. Tomiyasu's back.
Tomiyasu?
Tomiyasu. And Calafiori's obviously coming back. That's the reports as well coming out. I don't know how concrete they are, but are they concrete? I think.
I think so. I think Calafiori is supposedly back, yeah. He was meant to be back after the international break. So Timber, Calafiori and Tomiyasu.
Yeah. And we've got Zinchenko, obviously, I think he's available as well. So we've got options and depth there. And I just want to say about Ben White, and I posted that GIF, and what annoyed me was when I posted that GIF, there was a lot of hate towards Ben White after that, in terms of comments of, this is why he's not good enough for Raptors. No, this is an aspect of his game that he is weak at, and I'm okay with that. It's frustrating at times when he's in these situations, and I just know, oh no, I'm scared now.
But he's also got better, I would say, as well at that.
Do you think, Alec?
I think so.
Do you think?
I think what I will say is I think the problem that he has is never going to go away, but the consistency at which it happens has decreased. So I think he will get torn apart by certain wingers. So and that's going to happen in terms of the fundamentals of he does get caught a bit flat-footed. He does find himself a bit square on. He can find himself in those situations. But what I'd say is I think over the last couple of years, I do feel White has found himself in less of those situations, which tells me there's a situational thinking. I'm not even going to be there. I'm going to either go in earlier or whatever. But second, I think he's dealt with wingers a little bit better. I think it's got better. But I think that weakness will always be.
Yeah,
it's nowhere near as bad as Zinchenko, by the way. Like, it's not.
I think it's, for me, it's an area of his game that he's weak at. But what I will say about Ben White, and firstly, I can never knock Ben White because this is a guy he's said it in interviews that he's playing through pain. He has a high pain threshold, but he's suffering. And we go back to different periods of the season since he's been at the club, 21-22, towards the back end of that campaign, after the final international break. He was playing with significant strapping on, I think it was his right leg, and he was playing through that. You go back to last season, the 23-24 season, and the first half of the entire campaign, he was playing with an injury. And this season as well, he's been playing through an injury. And this is despite the fact that you can look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example, as being the best right back in the league because of his quality, and I completely buy that argument. But in terms of consistency, week in, week out, over the last 2 seasons, there's not been a right back who's been better than Ben White in that regard, in terms of consistency, in terms of performances, even though he's had spells where he's dropped off, and spells that, there's context behind that because he's been playing through injury. And I think that I'm happy that this is happening now anyway, because I think that we can get through these next run of fixtures with the depth that we have and achieve the desired results. But it's going to be interesting because I did a tweet about the comparison between Timber and White, and obviously Timber will play right back. And they're 2 different types of players. I'd say Timber personally is stronger in the press. He's stronger 1v1. He's better in interior zones when he's receiving in the half turn and he's turning with the underlaps as well. But what Ben White gives you is he has a stronger passing range, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. His work on the overlap in terms of that synergy with Saka is unmatched. And we've seen that in 2 successive seasons now, with Ødegaard then facilitating in deep areas, particularly towards the second half of last season. That is going to be a miss. But it's going to be very interesting to see an Ødegaard, Timber and Saka dynamic because, like I said, I think Timber is someone who thrives more on the inside. Now, someone could say to me, well, go back and look at Martinelli's goal against Leicester. It comes from Timber overlapping Saka. Then he puts the ball across the face of goal and Martinelli scores. But when we're looking at Timber, he is someone who, George has mentioned it, the opportunity to play him in midfield. That is because he's very comfortable in those areas with the underlap. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of works with Saka over a fair number of games, providing he stays fit. But I think it's a dynamic that can definitely have serious quality to it, especially with someone like Ødegaard there. But it's different, isn't it? It's a different way in which we're going to be playing through the right-hand side now, in my opinion, with Timber there. But I think it can work because ultimately, when you have good players with each other, they'll always make it work.
Yeah. I think it can work. I've no doubt it can work. I just worry about doing this and the timing of it with Tomiyasu. Yeah. That's the big thing. It's like, do I think we can get through the next 8 weeks just with Timber playing there? No, to be totally honest. And we can play Partey there as well, of course. But it's not Partey there. It's a solution. It's not ideal. It's not well, we can play Partey. Yeah, that's another option. I don't want to do that. So it relies on Tomiyasu a little bit, and maybe we feel Tomiyasu, whatever his injury issue was. I don't know, but yeah.
I think with Partey, just to quickly jump there, I think Partey has had really strong individual performances at right back. I think if we look against Luis Diaz, but in terms of what he's offering going forward in that specific role, it limits us. It's -1. It limits us because he's not going to overlap, and that's led to Kai Havertz dropping a lot wider to support Saka because someone needs to do that. And when you've got if you had like a Martin Ødegaard, Bukayo Saka, and Thomas Partey triangle there, you're looking at Ødegaard, who is not someone who is very strong going on the outside of Saka. Partey is not going to do that. So it leaves Saka a little bit more isolated there as well. So it's not a solution that is going to give us, in my opinion, consistent fluidity in attacking sense. So a lot of it is down on Timber because I also argue Tomiyasu is not that type of fullback either on the right-hand side. So a lot of it is down on Timber. And maybe there should be a little bit more of a worry here because Timber has came back from a significant injury as well. And he's already played a lot of minutes. But I think... Mate, if they knew about this and they thought that he needed surgery, let's say, in the summer, then I think, mate, why didn't you not just get it done in the summer? Yeah. But if it's something that's just maybe came about now in terms of whether he needs surgery or not, then I think, I'd rather do that because I think a fully fit Ben White gives you so much,
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, have to wait and see on that one. And just also finally on Partey, like it forces you to have a pivot. It like forces you to have a pivot because he can't do that running stuff. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Let's move on to some questions. Although, did you see the rumor earlier about Quinten Timber coming to Arsenal?
No, I didn't know. I saw some of the comments.
I would be so into that just for the vibes.
For the vibes.
Just pure vibes. The Timber brothers balling out for us. I would.
Is he
love
fullback
that.
as well? Is he a fullback?
He's a midfielder.
Is he?
There's some Dutch reporters saying he's our number one target to replace.
Go on, Alex, do it.
Do what?
Just give me the analysis of Quinten Timber. Just the words.
Oh, Quinten Timber. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. Elite half
Oh my god, I was not clear there.
Great between the lines. Turning radius, ball striking. Yeah. I've watched them all, mate. Watched it all.
That's it.
Let's come to some questions. Thank you to everyone on the Discord. Thank you to all our patrons and our YouTube members for being here. We really appreciate you guys. If you want to become a patron or YouTube member to access ad-free content and loads of exclusive content, you can listen to me and Rohan uninterrupted for 2 hours long. You lucky people. But yeah, loads of other stuff. We've got an interview with Martinelli Scouted coming on the way, so you can see the clips and stuff. We're going to go through and sort of see how we fix Martinelli. So that'll be fun.
Your boy.
Yeah, and you can also access the Discord and join our community. So thank you guys so much for doing that. If you want to do that, this is from Tiolu on the Discord, who says, imagine you are the Arsenal manager going into the winter transfer window and the budget is a lot, but you are only allowed to strengthen one position in the team or one profile. Which position would you choose and why? And I'll come to you, Mr. Jivan.
A forward. A forward.
Really?
Whether it's a striker or winger, I'm not too bothered. I remember when we spoke about this a lot in the summer, about what we want and our preferences, and I said that it needs to be someone who's going to give us serious pace, not press, serious pace, or praise, serious pace, to give us increased potency in transition, and that can be either up front or it can be on the wings. And obviously, we signed Raheem Sterling on deadline day. And to be honest, right, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I felt that in terms of where we were in the window, I felt that was a good acquisition given the finances and the type of deal it was. But as of today, at this moment of recording, it's been a disaster. So we need a forward.
I watched a clip of, and by the way, I know people don't like the player for certain reasons, and I this is pure bias. It's just what I like in a player. My favorite players are like, well, I'll tell you the player. It was Rafael, and he just picks up the ball on the edge of the box for Portugal, runs just out red arrow through the team, perfectly weighted pass to the left, one of those like backspin passes that gets out to the left, runs into the box, heads it in, 2-0 Portugal, and it's very like rudimentary and very like probably not thinking about all the stuff. And as George was here, be talking to me about his defensive contributions and how he presses and stuff. And the technical stuff. But when I watch him run, I'm just like, we need that running power. We need that burst, someone who can do that. And again, like you, I don't mind if it's on the wing or up front. But I just sometimes think, do we overthink the things in the market a little bit? Like sometimes just sign someone who's really quick, really good, or really good at scoring goals in the box. Like I just think sometimes we worry so much about systems and how they're going to fit in and whatever. And you have to think about that stuff. It's fine, but the system's constantly changing, and I think the individuals within it make what it is. They make themselves, and sometimes when you have a special physical talent like that, you just make it work. Maybe not for him, but someone like that.
It's for me. Like I said, I'm very open-minded because I don't know enough about every single player out there that's linked, but it's got to be. But I think someone who can give us that ability to capitalize upon moments as well. I think that's massive. But it's a case of, can you get that in the January window? I think at the very least we should be looking, and I think we will be looking. But I can't look past a forward, especially given who we have right now. We've got Sterling there, Jesus, who for me, I've said it, becoming unbearable to watch. sorry. And don't worry. Still, it's quite as bad, isn't it? But yeah, definitely a forward. I've got a question from Twitter.
Go for it.
It's from Ivor, at Ivor, Bike Jadal. Ivor Bike
Berkjedal, I would imagine.
Berkjedal. Do you think? Okay, yeah.
He's Norwegian.
Nice. And he asks, can you discuss whether we really need a striker considering Havertz's form, or is it just because some haven't been able to change their mind for the past year?
Something isn't right in our balance in the front three. Mm-hmm. And I think the market might have to dictate how we solve that. At the moment, I'm in two minds, and genuinely, I realized the other day, and let me just, before I say this definitively on a podcast, let me just check this. I was using ambivalent wrong. I thought ambivalent meant like apathetic, like you didn't care, but ambivalent is that you literally have two like conflicting thoughts, right? So I'm ambivalent. Either we go Martinelli, getting him central, and go down that path, at which point I don't know. Maybe we could do that without a striker, but I think Havertz, I'm not sure how that quite works. Or we stick with this Havertz false nine thing, creating space, being a box threat, whatever, and you have to get a more output-focused touchline winger. Those are kind of my two options. I think right now we have a Havertz who is a facilitator for one output guy on the right and a guy who, depends how you look at it, isn't getting the output on the left. Or we have on the left a guy who, if we get him central, we could do that, but we have someone stood in his central zones. There's something about this balance that isn't quite right. So I don't know if that is a striker, and I think it might just be a case of like, well, this striker is available, so therefore we're going to do that, and we're going to push Havertz elsewhere or whatever. I don't know. Look, I know this is a hot take. This is a hot take.
Go on.
We've had Havertz since last summer. If you said to me, I can make your team work and I can get Martinelli inside with an Isak type forward who pulls out wide and let's say, allows Martinelli inside, and we're going to build a team around Martinelli, and you can guarantee that Martinelli's going to be the output guy. Do you take £60 million for Havertz next summer? If you guarantee me that my attack as a whole gets better, I do it. Of course I do it, because I'm more interested in the collective. But equally, if someone said to me, okay, I can sign you a left winger who's going to guarantee you 25, 30 GA, do you get rid of Martinelli and basically keep the same system, and Havertz is the kind of the space creator for that person? Do you do that? Yes. I'm in service of the whole. I'm not playing one person's better than the other. I don't really know. I just think the balance is off. Yeah. Thoughts?
It's a lot there. It's interesting.
Mm.
So
do you know what I mean? Like, because we got Havertz recently, I think the idea of moving him on feels less possible. But to me, I'm like, if that makes the whole better, or pulling him back, like I don't think we've seen the best of him as a left midfielder. I also don't know if that would depend on the striker. Do you know what I mean? But I'm saying I'm open to everything in service of the whole.
For me, this season, we have barely seen Havertz as our number 9.
Mm.
That's where I stand on this. We've barely seen him. So sometimes the criticism of Kai Havertz that I've seen this season, that's in a completely different role to what we saw him thriving in last season. Bear in mind, I think Kai Havertz has been one of our top performers this season so far. I look at Arsenal, and when you talk about Arsenal's best performances under Mikel Arteta, I think 2024, from the start of 2024 all the way towards the end of the campaign, there is a strong case of that being our most balanced Mikel Arteta side to combat various things. And that came from Havertz leading the line, And for me, when we're talking about platforming Martinelli, for example, or getting even more out of Bukayo Saka, I think that is due to other factors and not Kai Havertz. I think what we saw Kai Havertz when he was playing up front was a serious level of synergy through both the left and the right. Now, again, Trossard was starting a lot of games, but I really do think that the Kai Havertz project at number 9 can really work, and we've seen that over a large sample size. Now, that's not me saying that Arsenal should not sign a striker. Again, the market dictates. If you can do something within the market that's special and that is an opportunity, you do it. Because bearing in mind, we need forwards. And as we already mentioned already, I don't mind which way Arsenal go with this. We need a forward, though, and we need a forward that fits the right profile. If that is a striker that can do what Kai Havertz does and more, then fine, go get that. Fine, I'm all for that. But it's about whichever way we want to iterate the squad. But for me, I think with Kai Havertz, and we're going to see it now, we'll see if everyone stays healthy, the main players, lots of Calafiori stays fit, Timber stays fit, Martin Odegaard stays fit, Kai Havertz will be playing number 9 from now till whenever. Let's say from now till Christmas, and we have those players fit. I can guarantee you, I'll guarantee you the perception on Kai Havertz as a number 9 will change, and he'll be bagging goals because we've seen it already. He will do it. Like, I'm so confident in him in that role.
Yeah. And I would probably come down on that side, and I think especially when Odegaard's in the team, I think it is different. I almost imagine it like a tent where you either have your central pole, in our case, Kai Havertz, that creates space for everyone else to be in the tent, or you get a load of pegs, and that means there's space in the tent from the pegs for someone to thrive in the tent. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So at the moment, we're going for a central pole instead of the pegs to hold the tent up, and that's fine. It's been sort of moved around a little bit, and therefore the space has been created. But we have a brilliant sample. And the Martinelli, again, this thing of like, but when we get Martinelli central, he did. I'm like, that was 2022 and 3 at this point. We're nearly in 2025. It feels like a bigger and bigger gamble the longer we go on. So if I had to fall down on one, I'd probably go for the winger. That's probably where I'd go. But it will depend on the market.
Yeah, and I think this maybe we're diverting slightly here, but I think there's a lot of discussion as to, why we, should we be platforming Havertz or should we be platforming Martinelli? We can platform both. Both can be platformed. Yeah, maybe. They both can be platformed. Trust me. If Calafiori is playing, if we have Mikel Merino as well, and we begin to see serious synergy there, Martinelli will be thriving, and Kai Havertz also will be thriving as well, playing in the role that we have seen in success with. Genuinely. So it's, for me, again, the market dictates. But right now, I think Kai Havertz, we have not seen enough of him at number 9 to be making these accusations that Havertz is not good enough as Arsenal striker, because these weren't the conversations that we were having towards the back end of last season, because Kai Havertz was, for me, Arsenal's best attacking performer. Yeah. He was Arsenal's best attacking performer.
And Havertz is someone I'm looking at and going, I'm here for the collective argument. The Martinelli collective argument, just like the longer it goes on that we don't want to look at him individually, I struggle with it, to be honest. Let's do 2 more questions, one each. One on Discord, one on X. And I'll start with Discord. Okay. This is from Ash11, who says, City arguably could have lost every game since Rodri's injury. Are Liverpool a bigger threat to win the title than they are? I would say this depends on one thing. No, 2 things. If City sign Zubimendi in January, City are a bigger threat. If how do I put this? If what is meant to come out in January comes out, yes, Liverpool are the bigger threat.
If Liverpool,
the knock-on effect of City, I've been charged with. There won't be sentenced and it won't happen yet. But the charges being proved or disproved, I don't know what it is. But the knock-on effect of that, people are not talking about it yet. And I've been talking about this since the summer. That's going to massively impact the season if it comes out.
I'm very torn here. What I will say is Liverpool are most certainly a threat now. That is not something I envisaged at the start of the season personally. I didn't expect that, so I was wrong there. If Liverpool can keep Konate, Van Dijk, Trent and Salah fit with Gravenberch, they should the whole team. If Liverpool, let's say they do not go through any injuries and they have this team right now, and let's just say Alisson was ruled out for the entire season, I think Liverpool will be a bigger threat. Now, I really do. Yeah, I think the depth, 9 points, we can overturn that. I'm confident that we can overturn that, but it is a big gap. It is a big gap, and that therefore means that they should be taken seriously. I think City, and I've said this before as well, I think City are going to struggle this season. I watched the way they play, and even with Zubimendi, I feel the impact of Rodri is massive. And I look at Kevin De Bruyne. I feel Kevin De Bruyne has lost a yard of pace as well. I think his quality is undeniable, But in terms of that like running power in transition, I don't think he's the same player anymore. You have Erling Haaland as that serious threat there, and obviously lots of Doku and Savio. But I think, I don't know, but I feel confident against City this season. I do. So I'd probably say Liverpool.
Okay.
But then, at the same time, I wouldn't mind if Liverpool beat Man City at Anfield.
It's going to be tight. Whatever happens, it's going to be tight. It's going to be
well, okay, actually, let me throw this to you. Liverpool versus Man City in a couple of weeks' time. What result do you want?
City win.
Does that not show to you that maybe you see Liverpool as a bigger threat? Or it's still early though, isn't it?
It's because it's right now.
Yeah.
Like we need to get rid of that. We need Liverpool to not think that they're invincible. If Liverpool win that game, yeah. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I want them to be taken down a peg.
Okay.
And I want it to be seen that everyone's fallible, because then when everyone's fallible, I think we're in a very good place.
Fair.
Final question, please, Mr. Jivan.
Right. There's a lot of there's a lot on strikers actually, and there's a lot on Isak. So I'll give you this one: Gyökeres or Isak? From Isak. Abdullah. From Abdullah on Twitter.
Isak, no question.
Isak, yeah. I agree. So.
Easy. Yeah. Gyökeres we looked at you want to check out on the Cannon podcast. We looked at him in the summer. And I've watched him. Look, I've said this before. Like the bully aspect of Gyökeres, I love. The kind of like get out of my way, and I like that. And if we're going to sign a centre forward, I kind of think there's something in that. Someone who's just like a bully.
Yeah.
But outside the box, I'm not a fan.
I don't know enough about him, but so you and George have watched him a fair bit now. Would you say he's become quite overrated? Because I think the conversations that he's put in right at the top end now in terms of, because of obviously the output. You can't deny the output is ridiculous, but I don't know. I've not watched enough of him. I just don't know. So.
I'll be real. I watched him before. Then we did the scout. We looked at clips, and I've seen 2 90s of him since. So I'm not going to say I'm some expert, but from what I see, that sort of ability to like run a game from centre forward, he doesn't have it. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have it. He's an output guy, and he's a guy with space that he can run into, and he will punish you, and he's a bully. But like in the Premier League, when the spaces are so compact and so I don't like it.
I'm kind of interrogating you here, but if he becomes available in January for 60 million, would you do it?
No, honestly, no. Okay. Because then you lock yourself in, and I don't think he's the right player. Not for the Premier League. I think he's great in also in transitional teams as well. Not that Sporting a transition, but there's just bigger spaces.
Yeah, so, you see the goals that he does tend to score. I mean, the goals. They are in big spaces, isn't it?
Yeah, if you like Gyökeres, fair, but just imagine a Gyökeres goal and transpose it onto Arsenal.
Yeah.
You just can't see it.
You can't.
Whereas like an Osimhen, you're like, oh, he works himself an angle in the box, or oh, he gets like a cross, literally against Galatasaray. For Galatasaray, he scored from a half space cross. And I was like, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. But I don't know. Will we sign anyone in January?
No.
Yeah.
But will we sign anyone, Alex?
No, probably not. But we have a lot to look forward to. Next 10 games are winnable. We are back on... I keep forgetting. I think it is Saturday, isn't it?
Yeah, well, with the early kickoff, I think.
It's Saturday. Well, no, 3 o'clock kickoff. 3 o'clock on Saturday. That moment when the ball hits the Nottingham Forest net, I'm going to... You might be able to hear me from London.
I'm going to be doing all sorts of things.
All sorts of things. That can't even be mentioned on the podcast. Rohan, it is a joy to have you here. Thank you for being on the main podcast. And yeah, Rohan's going to be here, permanent fixture from now on, which is very, very exciting. We will get the three of us together at some point.
Next week, it's going to
happen. We thought it was going to be today. But George had stuff to do. So yeah. But thank you so much. If you got to the end of this podcast, you are a true listener We love you so much. Make sure you drop us a comment on YouTube. Rate the podcast if you're listening on Spotify or Apple. If you want to become a patron or a member, you are more than welcome to join our community. We'd love to have you. Any final words, Rohan?
No, I just want to reiterate the fact that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we will go on a run. And I think the opinions can change very quickly, and football can change very quickly. Forget about even going all the way towards Christmas. Couple of weeks' time, it can change. Yeah. But what I will say is we've provided a lot of context, etc., and we've looked at our problems as well. The reality is that we need to start winning games now.
We need to win. Yeah.
We need to win games.
Start scoring goals and win.
Yeah.
On that note, we need to start scoring. We need to start winning. And you need to listen to more of the Cannon podcast. Thank you for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.